Good morning. How are you today? Well, it's overcast. It's not raining. It's 66 degrees, so it's a little cooler than usual. And today is, I guess, both Columbus Day and uh, Indigenous Peoples Day. Forgive me for not getting the name exactly correct. I think perhaps they should be different days. There are quite obvious distinctions. You know, going from the savage way discovery occurred uh, to the explorer who believed he could go around the world, as did other explorers at the time, and then did find land, thinking at first it was India, not realizing it was islands, thus that were somewhere between him in Spain and India, meaning the entire continent of the Americas. So, and then as for the indigenous people, the first citizens, we set about to wipe them out, because in part the notion of discovery is if a land is unoccupied, then whoever comes there first owns it. So it's a very sorry chapter historically, but we've celebrated, as we all know. For a guy like me from the South Bronx, who was a federal prosecutor, I have two views of Columbus Day. One is the only good cooking in the Flannery family came from, I guess, an uncle-in-law who married a Flannery aunt, and he was quite a cook, and we had some of the best sauces I've ever had, and he was the most quiet and brilliant engineer. So that's kind of my personal experience. In the neighborhoods, you had Irish and Italian and Jewish and persons of color and from Puerto Rico, and they say it was a melting pot. It was really a fairly independent group of people. And of course, as a prosecutor, I saw organized crime. And, you know, each generation, when they arrive here, find different ways to organize. And organized crime was a powerful thing. And on, I think it was April, Joey Gallo was shot down at Umberto's Clam House, not far from the U.S. Attorney's office. And there are various stories about how many people shot him, but it was believed that he had been involved in the assassination of Columbo at Columbus Circle on Columbus Day. So that's my context for Columbus Day. I know some are taking it off. I'm writing, which is what I do every day to some extent. So what is our story? Well, I'm not going to repeat the things I've been saying on the weekend about how Democrats are dragging their feet about subpoenas and things like that. You've heard me say that, and we'll see what happens in the next day or so what's worthy of comment. What I'm thinking about are the vaccines and the language that we use. Not only do we not call it a mandate and try to enforce it, but since we have, we've seen some effect. We call those who don't take the vaccine hesitancy. Now, hesitant suggests that you're going to go forward with it. I was hesitant to marry, but I did. I was hesitant to try to swim across Lake George, but I did. That's hesitant. But these people aren't hesitant. They're downright opposed to it. They think all sorts of vile and terrible things will happen to them if they take the vaccine, and they believe it because they've been told lies, and because they're undereducated, and because they want to believe it and they want to hate. And how do you get over such hesitancy? We do this in politics all the time. You know, instead of saying that this is another form of enemy for our health and safety, we say they're just hesitant. You know, it's just, and we have all these people discovering when they lose somebody in the hospital because they haven't been double vaxxed and they're certainly not getting boosters, that they lose somebody to death to the virus. And then they say, you know, people should go take this vaccine. They're no longer hesitant. Maybe they realize they've been lied to by Fox and company. The resistance, the hesitancy, goes into other areas that are dangerous. Our armed services, we find out, have been slow to vaccinate despite an order from the president that they do so. And it's interesting to study who does it. It's something like 90% of the Navy has been vaccinated. Now remember, there were people on a ship for I think 2 months at the beginning of this, and then there were quite a number of people that went to the hospital and people died. So the Navy got it. They're on a ship, they're in a close quarters, they understand it. And the full-time armed services, they seem to get it. But you dip down to like 40% when you're talking about the reserves, getting closer to the, the part-time but necessary armed services who have been called into action more frequently. So they present a challenge to be deployable if they're not getting the vaccine, because we don't want them spreading the illness. Can you imagine being the president dealing with these issues every day? Why won't they do what I told them? What do? Do I drum them out of the military? Do I discipline them? Do I fine them? Do I dock their pay? This is the problem with America. People don't respect the law because those who would be their leaders, who make great pretense at being their leaders in the law and the Constitution, ignore it. They don't abide by it. They ignore it. People get sick and they die. There's a fellow in Texas now, a prominent Republican, who's in the hospital. And he's still railing against the vaccine. What is wrong with these people? It's quite amazing. Well, what happy story can I tell you to match up with that? A good friend of mine, when he turned 50, he started doing ultra marathons. That is more than the 26 miles. I think there's one in Boston today, the regular one. But an ultra marathon is like 50 miles. And he ran through the desert. And in fact, it was a way for him to deal with his grief at his mother's death. And he did it. And he described how people got lost and some died. Well, there was one of these ultra marathons up in Utah. And soon after they started on this 50-mile run through the mountains, a snowstorm came on. And so then things were whited out. And then they couldn't see the trails. And ultimately there were 18 inches of snow that came down. And they did all manner of things to save themselves. And the good story is that by the end of the day, a combination of their athletic prowess, the smart way they dealt with the crisis, the people who came to their aid, they all lived. So it's somewhat of a miracle. Now, it could be a metaphor for us. I feel like we're in a whiteout snow, and that we're being told BS by a lot of politicians in both parties. Oh, just be there, it'll be okay. Well, it may be if we keep their feet to the fire, as it said. And I think in the end we can come out this well. But the price we pay is vigilance of those that we think we can trust and of those we know we can't. It's pretty terrible. So I'm out here today. It's pleasant. I hope you can get out a little bit. Soon we'll be worried about the ravages of the cold here. And we've had some really amazing snowstorms here in Virginia as well. So be well today, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.